We are here with Simon Costin, and we're at the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic. Thank you for welcoming us into your
pleasure
office, library.
It's the archive.
The archive, there we go.
Part of the archive.
And yeah, this was kind of the culmination of our journey as we were just kind of explaining to you. So this is kind of the end of it for us. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for having us. Great. So could you start by telling us a bit about the museum itself, its history and kind of what its core mission is?
So the museum was originally founded by a man called Cecil Williamson, and he had a really interesting life. Actually, he was a spy for MI5. He had an abiding interest in witchcraft and magical practice, and he opened the first iteration of the museum on the Isle of Man in I think it was 1951. It actually opened.
Yeah.
And a year or so later, he was joined by a chap called Gerald Gardner. Gerald Gardner was keen to promote his newly formed belief system, if you like, of Wicca, Gardnerian Wicca. And Gerald became kind of the resident witch at the museum on the Isle of Man. And they were both very strong characters, both Cecil and Gerald. And Cecil kind of took umbrage with Gerald a little bit for using the museum as a platform for his books.
Right, yeah.
And to promote Wicca. And Gerald, on the other hand, thought that some of Cecil's displays were somewhat sensationalist, to say the least. I think Cecil was always very much that you had to give people what they kind of expected.
Yeah.
But running alongside that would be all the real material, which would draw in genuine practitioners. So he tried to strike a balance between these kind of slightly lurid dioramas of naked ladies on altars with the actual genuine material. So it's
got a different balance, isn't it? Like difficult thing to balance
between,
because you do need to obviously fund something.
Yes, yeah. But I think we've steered well away from that. It's far more academic in nature, I think. So after a couple of years, Cecil and Gerald came to blows. Cecil moved to the mainland. He went to Windsor, Stratford-upon-Avon. Before here, he was in Burton-on-the-Water, and always met with very strong opposition from the local religious community.
Yeah,
basically. So, and that culminated in the Burton-on-the-Water Museum being firebombed. Basically, they set fire to it, and they also hung a dead cat in the tree outside. And it was all pretty grim.
Yeah,
there were people with placards saying Satan's house, and they've never actually been in the museum, which is quite common. So he then, by that time, he'd bought a house in Portperrow near here, and he knew of Boscastle as being a place that was visited by tourists, basically on the route from Tintagel, and he thought it would be quite a good place to set up another museum. He also had several museums. Cecil was always opening museums. He had a museum of smuggling, shell work, and then he bought this in 1959, this building, and then opened it in 1960.
Did he get any opposition?
Not here at all.
No.
I mean, we still get hate mail occasionally.
I was just going to ask that. Have you, like in your time here, ever sort of had any opposition or sort of target for anything?
None. Very, very, very little. But I've worked very hard, and Graham King, the previous director, to establish good relationships with the local, Christian community.
Yeah,
it's all the same thing at the end of the day.
So could you just tell us a little bit about the sort of artefacts, especially given the academic nature, as you mentioned, of the museum, the sort of artefacts and objects that the museum holds in its collection?
Well, I think Cecil's focus was predominantly, he was very interested in sort of cunning folk and pellers and folk magic, really. So the main focus of the collection is that. But alongside that, he liked to draw comparisons with other forms of magical belief. So there was a lot of things from Africa, from his travels abroad, and we've kept that going to an extent. We will look at divinationary practices and then put in things from other cultures that reflect what happens in the UK. And I think we do that with almost every of the sections within the museum. I mean, I inherited the narrative that exists in the museum at the moment, which Cecil's was he wasn't a museum or an academic person. So Cecil tended to put things in the cases with his fabulously colourful, let's say, typewritten captions alongside them, and just let people make their own comparisons and stories. Whereas Graham took everything out and organised it into sections. So you've got the image of the witch in popular culture, and then there's persecution and protection and cursing. And I've been trying to gently unpick that narrative a little, because my feeling is that magical objects don't like being put into a box. It's a bit like measuring a cloud with a ruler. It's something that can be used to harm, can also be used to heal, and so there's more nuance, I think, that needs to be introduced. So we've been slowly unpicking that to a degree.
So sort of you've had it beginning with something a bit more akin to a cabinet of curiosities, and then going from that to sort of the more traditional rigid museum, and you're sort of trying to breathe that new sort of, sort of unpick all of it, I guess, and just I like that.
Just put some poetry back into it, and put also the like I said, magical objects don't like being categorised, and I don't like categorising. I'd rather say hint at what the object might be used for and how it's used for, because within different magical groups, one object can be used in multiple different ways. So it's not my place to start straitjacketing something into a definition. It's let people come to it and use their own experience.
So do you have a particular favourite piece in the museum?
It changes. It changes. We move things around in the collection quite a lot. So we'll get something out of storage, and all of a sudden I think, God, I really haven't looked at that properly before. But I guess some of my long-term favourites, there's a strapped skull, which is now in the last room. And that has a particular resonance to it for me. It's something about the intensity of it. It's quite.
That was one of Cecil's, right? Was that one?
It was one of Cecil's objects that he got from a witch in Devon, I think. And there's that. There's God, it's very difficult. I quite like quite a lot of the artwork because I come from an art background. So the artwork associated with the museum. At the moment, I think the Maxine Sanders pieces are incredible.
So they're on loan at the moment, right?
They're on loan, but they're all coming here eventually.
Okay.
Actually, half of what we're showing is actually remaining with us.
Yeah.
Maxine's very, very kindly donated a lot of objects. And some of those are the theatricality of them I love. And like, there's a beautiful sistrum from the 1970s that uses plexi, that uses acrylic. And it's very of its time, but it's still very potent. So but it shifts and changes, as it should do.
Sort of as director, when what would you say drew you personally to this museum, and sort of because it was 2013 you started, that sort of got you so deeply involved with that, sort of the sort of custodian sort of ship and this. Preserving this aspect of British folklore and sort of legend, or beyond Britain, as you pointed out. But what would you say? Was there anything in particular, or you say drew you most to it?
Not really one particular thing. I mean, I'd always been interested in magical practice, and I think as a child, if I look at all my drawings from being a kid, they're all ghosts and witches and things like that. There's just always this feeling that running alongside this plane of existence, there's another one, or there's several others. And I think once you accept that and start seeing the world in magical terms, your whole life experience opens up and changes radically. And I think that shift happened. There are a number of things that helped that along the way, but one of them was being taken to the British Museum by Derek Jarman, who was a filmmaker, and he taught part-time at Wimbledon School of Art, where I was at school. And he took me to the British Museum to see John Dee's magical objects in the case in the Enlightenment Gallery. And it was literally like an earthquake moment when you realise that that strand of magical practice was still in existence and still very powerful and could be tapped into and learnt about. And so I've always had an interest in it, really, in answer to the question. And I think this museum had always been somewhere I'd wanted to visit, but because I can't drive and it's quite a liminal space, it's not easy to get to, as I'm sure you've discovered.
Yep.
It was always somewhere I wanted to visit, and then I saw the floods on the news in 2004. I was like, oh, God, it's probably been damaged irreparably and all the rest of it. So I was trying to get in touch with Graham for weeks, but all the phone lines were down.
Yeah.
And then eventually he rang up and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "How can I help? There must be something I can do." And he said, "Well, unless you know anyone with a load of old display cases, I'm not sure how you could help." And it just so happened that a friend of mine was decommissioning all the old display cases from the Geology Museum. So I acted as a kind of go-between to help Graham negotiate getting all those cabinets, which are all downstairs, as you can see.
Wow.
And that began the relationship. So whenever I wanted to come to the museum, Graham would come pick me up from Bodmin Parkway, and it made it a lot easier. And that was kind of the beginning of the courtship, if you like, with the museum and the collection.
Fantastic.
How has your deep immersion in the material and your work here at the museum shaped your own understanding of magic, folklore, and the world itself?
Ooh. Right.
Yeah, actually, I mean, we could make this even easier, is because I don't know whether you come at this from a preservation perspective or are you a practitioner yourself?
Yeah.
You are.
Oh, God. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Graham would have passed it on to someone who wasn't a practitioner.
Yeah.
I don't know whether he was more interested in the conservation of it.
Both.
Yeah.
Both. But Graham also knew I had a curatorial practice, so I span both worlds.
Okay.
I work within museums, and I think one of the questions we'll get to later is about the Museum of British Folklore.
Yes.
And Graham was very keen on that project.
Yeah.
And so we had lots of chats about both folklore and witchcraft. And I think in terms of magical practice, I was very much taught that the more you know, the less you talk about it.
Okay.
And to know and be silent. So Graham probably was unaware of my personal magical history, if you like.
Yeah.
But then he did some digging and found out.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult to find out. So I've forgotten the question. What was it?
Yeah, so on a personal level, how does your immersion
in the
material and the work here shape your understanding of magic, folklore, and the world itself?
Okay. So I would say that having access to the collection and the archive has massively increased not just my knowledge but my working practice, because it gives you the opportunity to handle objects that most people don't get to handle. And some of the objects within the museum come with the caveat that they need to be not regularly, but semi-often charged or left in moonlight or used within ritual practice.
Yeah.
Which is quite unusual, because most museums, nothing comes out of those cases unless it needs restoring or restoration work. But the difference with magical objects is that, sometimes they need to be kept.
I guess there's an argument for that being part of the restoring, sort of work, part of the care of it as well,
Yeah. And that's what I really enjoy. So it's very much enriched my own personal practice, let's say.
Yeah.
We kind of mentioned that earlier, didn't we? We were walking around sort of wondering if they did sort of any cleansing work here or anything like that, just the smells.
Cleansing? No, I disagree with that.
We just smelled
vehemently.
incense when we came in. So
Oh no,
it was
that's not
kind
to
of
do
like,
with cleansing. That's to do with just setting the
we
atmosphere.
didn't know whether
No,
you had
we
to,
often get people coming in saying, "Oh, I can come in and smudge
Yeah.
for you," and
All
it's like
turn up with
taking
their
the-
big bundles of sage, right?
Yeah, no, back off. It's why would you take the batteries out of something? You know, the objects that are in our care are in our care. Then it's not our place to start denuding them of their
Yeah,
magic and their power and their essence. Why would we do that?
it's true.
I just asked something which we can always cut if you want to. I'm sure you're aware of Annabelle the doll.
Oh yes.
So I'm wondering what you feel about the fact that they put Annabelle in a supposedly kind of cabinet built specifically to keep whatever it is contained, right? Whereas your stuff isn't in a cabinet to keep it contained. As you say, it's being let out, it's being charged.
Not. There's a difference between Annabelle. Annabelle is allegedly a malignant presence within that doll. Oh, isn't that the story?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can kind of understand how people might want to do that. For instance, with some of our puppets, who are some of which are quite lively, we have small sharp pieces of mirror placed beneath them to reflect back their energy. So it's not dissimilar to that. Working with magical objects, you need to think in a completely different way to, putting this cup in a museum and talking about who made it and what it's made of and when you're dealing with a magical object, it's a whole different philosophy comes into practice.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did that answer that question?
No, I think so.
So the doll, fine, in a box that contains it. Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely fine.
Also, I can kind of see how you're saying, like, although I've made almost a leap there, right? Like, one is a magical item and one is a possessed item. They're not really the same. Though they often get
conflated.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can see where you're coming from.
And I do, sort of, don't know whether I'm staying or not, but I get what you're saying about the smudging. It does seem to be sort of a bit of a fad that everyone's decided works with. But I don't know. I guess sage smells nice. I don't know.
Yeah, I can leave that in if you want, if you'd rather not.
That's fine.
It's just a thing that popped into my mind when you were talking about cabinets and things as well.
No, it's talking about objects with potency. That's fine.
Well, I mean, this leads in quite well then, I guess, sort of beyond the actual academic and sort of historical side of some of these objects, which, are very important as well. Do you find any object in particular, sort of retains a certain energy or sort of strong emotional response, not just from yourself, but from visitors as well? Any that are particularly sort of charged and active that you think do evoke that response from people?
Yeah, there's quite a few, mostly the curses. The curses are an interesting selection of objects because you're dealing with people's perception of them, what they project onto them, and also their inherent energy.
Yeah. So
it's often the curses that people have the strongest reaction to. But we get different objects affect people differently. It's often Cecil's black mirror, his scrying mirror, that has that beautiful floral carved wooden surround. People will see things in that. Some people who are very sensitive have to keep leaving, coming back in, just because they find the whole place overwhelming, which it is on many levels overwhelming. There's a lot of things in this museum.
There's a lot to take in.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
So yes, they do have potency. There's a blasting rod downstairs.
That drew me in actually. I mean, I don't know whether it's just I love sort of the wood itself, it's blackthorn, isn't it?
Blackthorn.
Yeah. And just having sort of that just so beautifully made, and also like the cause it was made for. It's but I did find that we and most people, I think, and maybe it's just because they're very interesting displays, but sort of end up getting quite kind of caught up in the beginning. We're all like working around each other because there's so much, but they're all little, on a sort of on a historical point of view, I guess, rather than the magical. You've got those, so many little stories attached to each one, sort of tied into like individual lives. I think that's that human element of it really sort of draws people in as well. But I guess that's what magic is, it is that very human.
Yeah, so kind of moving on a little bit from the collection that you have here, you kind of alluded to already. So you also have your Museum of British Folklore.
Yeah.
So maybe you could tell us a bit about that, and maybe how, I was wondering whether it kind of complements the mission here or whether it's a completely separate entity. I don't know how you see those.
Mm-hmm. So the Museum of British Folklore is a long-term project to establish the UK's first ever Museum of Folklore, focusing specifically on seasonal customs and events.
Yeah.
So it's not folk art particularly, and it's not folklore in general, like myths and legends and fairy stories and things like that. It's specifically the seasonal customs and events that happen in the UK. So barrel burning in Ottery St Mary, and Abbott's Bromley horn dance, and the rush cart in Saddleworth, etc.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got hundreds of them in the UK, yet there's nowhere that if you've got a passing interest, you can go and find out more about, that it just doesn't exist. And I'm amazed that the Victorians didn't really. It's the sort of thing you would have, William Morris might have put together when he's reimagining of Merry England, but they didn't. And I suspect it's because the way in which museums traditionally structure themselves by coming from the top down. So it's, the academics with the knowledge, or the people with the objects who present them to us, the lowly people. With a folklore museum, it's totally the other way around. It's the people who have the knowledge, and the people who've got the costumes and the traditions. So I think traditionally museums have shied away from that because they don't know how to contextualize it.
Yeah.
And also it's changing all the time. Folklore morphs and develops and grows or dies out and something else comes. So it's very difficult for a museum to pin those things down. But for me, that's always been such a challenge, because you can work with that. There's all sorts of interesting ways. And we've been doing it by having touring exhibitions, or exhibitions in different venues. So we've been going to people like the Whitechapel Gallery in London, or the Towner in Eastbourne, or Compton Verney in Warwickshire. We have a very good relationship with Compton Verney, and putting on exhibitions that have never been done in the UK before.
Yeah.
So the relationship between that museum and this museum, there are overlaps, of course there are, between folklore and witchcraft and magical belief. But the main thrust of the Museum of British Folklore are the seasonal events. So it is kind of separate.
Yeah. And so that is that going to ever have like a permanent location, or do you plan to keep that as a touring?
How much money have you got?
Not a lot.
Yeah. So no, the long-term vision for the museum is for it to have a base, but what form that base takes is open to debate at the moment. What we're doing is taking some new trustees on board, and then we're going to apply for some seeding money, which basically means we do a feasibility study.
Yeah.
And that feasibility study will be a group of consultants that look at how it will run, where it should be, road and rail links, footfall, all those things. Spreadsheets, I imagine. There'll be dozens of spreadsheets. And then with that information, we can go to someone like the Heritage Lottery and say, okay, we need 10 million to build this, or we need 5 million to adapt an existing building, or we're going to have a storage with an exhibition space attached. So it's all, at the moment, it's all in flux.
Yeah.
But very interesting. I love it at the moment. It's really
I'm just thinking, because it's in my local museum in Devizes.
Oh, one of our exhibitions, yeah.
Yes. So I've been to that
Uncommon
one.
People, Folklore in Wessex.
Yes, I went a while back. I'm trying to get Andy to come over and have a look as well.
Yeah.
But they are planning on moving the museum, so I guess that building in probably 50 years' time will be available.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Whenever they get that moved.
It's a bit far for me to travel every day.
There is that.
So there is that. But
you could have a trustee in charge.
Closer to here. But
yeah.
Well, that's true. But
I live locally.
That exhibition goes to Poole next, and then Salisbury next year.
You can come down and see it with me then,
He's in Bournemouth, so...
Yeah. Oh, okay.
That's it. Whereabouts in Poole? They're going to because they're just reopening in Poole.
They're reopening. It's their first exhibition that they're opening.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It's gone directly from me to Andy's time.
Yeah.
But
and then sort of in between us.
Yeah. Kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it might have been the Russell Coates would be interested in that sort of thing as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's very Cabinet of Curiosities like itself, though, to be honest.
So one of the things we were going to ask you was, I was going to leave to the end, but I can just, it kind of relates back again to the power of these items.
Okay.
Because we're wondering, and this is probably slightly leading because I know there's something in the entranceway, but whether anything paranormal has ever happened in the museum.
Well, the short answer is yes, but not for it's very intermittent. Back in Graham's time, there was a period when Graham was living here, just when there's some renovation work happening and stuff, and he reported kind of the odd crash at night and had run downstairs to find nothing had been disturbed. And in the past, there were a couple of paranormal groups that came in and recorded footsteps, or personally, the only thing that I've seen or experienced are objects moving. You'll come in the morning and it seems to go, there's no one specific object that moves, but we had a series of tarot cards that would rearrange themselves. And the cases are all locked. But things turn round, or it's very random. There's no kind of that object always does X. It doesn't.
It's probably an obvious thing to ask, but I'm assuming you like check CCTV afterwards, and
you can never see it.
You never see it happen.
The weird thing is that the two times when we have been, because the cameras only operate, I think they record for 48 hours and then delete. So but when we did check something, there was a spider's web in front of the camera with a big fat spider. So it
was him.
Didn't see anything.
Or her.
But yeah.
I guess it's kind of following on to that as well. We asked about the sort of any particular object that draws you to it. Is there any object here that you find a little bit unsettling? Anything that you find a little bit
unsettling?
You talked about use earlier. So is there anything that you personally would avoid, I guess, using or charging, that you just don't want to go near it?
In terms of charging, we're very specific. We've been given like 3 objects that have to be, every so often charged up. But for the most part, no, we leave them to do whatever they're doing. But in terms of feeling unsettled by an object, not really. I think I've come to. It was like a courtship. I wasn't joking when I said when I started coming here, you develop a relationship with objects. If you saw my house, you'd understand. But you come to acknowledge its energy then, and how these things like to be handled and don't like to be handled. So you have to be sensitive to that, particularly here. So, but there are things that are unsettling. I mean, there's a Japanese blasting rod downstairs.
Just below.
And I find that quite tricky. I don't know why. I never want it pointing at me. And there's a couple of things that just slightly unnerving, but generally not really. You have to be sympathetic. So
I think that was quite well worded on the tarred skull, actually, talking about sort of being sympathetic and kind to, and I really like that, because as I said, sometimes you look at a bog body in the British Museum or anything like that, and you lose sight of the human sometimes for the for the sake of the object. And I think having that, you can't understand it unless you do see it as the human element as well, whether it's literally the remains of a human or someone that's a human that's made it for a specific purpose.
I could wrap up with number 11 if you like.
I think so, because we mainly covered number 10, didn't we?
Yeah. So, our podcast explores the weird side of places particularly. I'm sure you realise that's why we're here.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we cover kind of the unsettling, the uncanny, the deeply mysterious. So how do you see the Museum of Witchcraft and Magic and the broader subjects of folklore and magic that you champion connect to the inherent sense of the weird that permeates not just Cornwall, but human history and belief across the ages? How long have you got?
How long have you got? How long's a piece of string? Well, yeah, of course they permeate all through those things. I think if you take this museum, in terms of the uncanny, it's inherent within the things we display and the history of a lot of the objects. There's really interesting stories that could be pulled out as to how a particular object had changed somebody's life, or, for instance, the cock rock and the fanny stone have generated life, if you see it in those terms. So, or helped generate life. So the uncanny is kind of woven through nearly practically everything in this museum, on one level or another. It depends how you define uncanny, of course, but if it's... How would you define uncanny? Go on.
Good question. I mean, throwing it back at
you
us
should,
now.
of all people,
I
should
was
know.
going to say.
Yes, it's a podcast and a TV series on the BBC.
You should be a politician.
I mean, I guess for me, uncanny is I mean, you could go very simple and just say it's what science hasn't explained yet. It's people, sitting there and looking up at something and say, how did they do that? And there's possibly a very good reason. But I think it's something that, to me, the uncanny is something that kind of grips us and defies explanation, or just makes you think that is too weird, too strange to be a coincidence. I guess that, if anything, is how I'd see what I'd refer to as the uncanny. So
I think kind of add into that, maybe even things that are just difficult to explain with a simple explanation or a scientific explanation as well.
You should come to my house. Do you know about Dockacre? I'll tell you later. But yeah,
okay.
Since moving there, because I was kind of, the jury was out on ghosts for me, really, particularly. But since moving there, it's the most haunted house in North Cornwall.
Oh.
So now I have to accept that I can't explain what happens in the house, but it happens. So, yeah, and I still can't quite get my head around it.
Yes.
They will take pictures off the wall and just place them very gently on the floor. But they don't break anything. It's always very playful, and it's movement rather than seeing anything being seen. Other people have seen things. Annoyingly, I haven't. And I suspect I will live there my entire life and never see anything.
I wonder if that's because you're at ease with it, though. Like you're
desperate to see
something.
Yeah.
That is another thing, which is, I've had things like that happen before, and I just, we've said it before, like we really want to see things, we really want to actually see it with our eyes, but you can see evidence of it. You think, I don't know how that got there. I definitely didn't put that there. Yeah. But actually seeing it with your eyes is something completely different.
I have a tattoo on my leg that's in the old script Owen, and it says, "I want to believe."
Yeah.
Because I don't class myself as a complete skeptic. I used to. I used to class myself as an atheist. And now I'm kind of on the fence. I've kind of heard too many stories, too many people have experiences.
Since
maybe
this podcast, I think,
mostly since. And so I'm like, okay, well, I don't quite believe yet because I haven't experienced it. But I'm open to it.
Yeah.
And so I want to believe is kind of, that's my middle ground.
Yeah.
My politician's answer again.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I'll show you a little clip of film of the cameras picked up at home after this.
Ooh.
Excellent. I think that's probably a good place to wrap it up, then.
Yeah. I want to see the video.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate you taking the time today. So it's been fantastic and a great chance to sort of visit the museum and a brilliant end to the trip, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of good for us as well because we most people get to go around the museum, but we've had someone to have a personal chat with. So,
Great. Well, thanks for asking me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we do a plug? Did you want to go for a chance to do a plug, or
do you want to plug anything other than the museum?
Other than the museum, not really. I mean,
we can
the Wessex exhibition that's moving to Poole and Salisbury, so go along and see that.
Do you know what time when it's moving to Poole?
Oh, now you've got me. I think I should know this, shouldn't I? Cut, and I'll tell you
again.
yeah. I'll give you the details later. I can't. It's in October, but
there you go. So that
we're installing in October. Yeah, have a look at the website for Poole Museum.
We're this is probably going out in September. So
okay, great.
Also, we will be going to Poole.
We will in October, so
at
we'll
the end of October.
Okay.
So we probably could stop
to go and see Uncanny live.
Yeah.
There you go.
So definitely check out the museum here, and hopefully coming to a museum near you, the touring one as well. But yeah, that about wraps it up.
Stay weird.